Good morning, everybody. I'm Melissa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials. Thought I gotta fix this camera just a wee bit. There we go. Okay. I hope everybody that's listening today has headphones on. And I hope that if you're one of my children that you're not listening. My adult children. You cannot know all my secrets at this point in the game. You're not parents yet. So if you're one of my children, swipe away. You may not listen to this. Okay. We're going to talk today, and like I said, I want you to have headphones on. We're going to talk today about St. Nicholas, and I don't want to ruin any magic for anybody. So again, headphones on, please. Headphones on or volume down. Which volume down would be weird because you need to be looking at me talking. But anyways, this is it's a fairly big Waldorf festival, but that's not how it came about in my life. So I thought I would talk about that first and sort of why it's a magical space for me as a person and sort of where it came from. And then we can talk about other things. I know that there are some people who are going to maybe want to talk about social implications, and we can go over that a little bit. But I want to be pretty open about when I was a kid. There was no Krampus, and St. Nicholas just had a white horse. He didn't have a helper. So that was my tradition in my family as a child, and that's the tradition that I brought to my children. It wasn't until I learned about Krampus that I was like, hey, y'all, there's this other guy. Krampus is kind of scary. He's actually really scary. So I just wanted to talk about the tradition that we had first and how I brought that to my children. And then we can discuss the St. Nick versus Santa situation. And again, if you're coming on late, please wear headphones for this conversation. It's not a child-friendly conversation. So I'm going to share this picture. This picture I'm going to share with the camera over here. And here. This picture is me. I think I was probably 5 or 6. Probably 6. And St. Nicholas. And I have this crazy look on my face because St. Nicholas is reading out of this book about all of the things I had done that were naughty. And I remember this day very well because I was like, how does he know? I remember feeling very not ashamed or anything like that, but definitely like how does he know? And I know that today there would be a school of thought of, oh, we shouldn't keep a naughty or nice list, or we shouldn't go that way because that's really punitive. And so I'm going to say that I'm just going to disagree just a little bit. Not that we should be reminding our children constantly of things that they did that were wrong. Definitely not. But in a much more playful way. And I actually kind of think that everybody needs a little Krampus in their life. Everybody needs a little naughty list. Everybody needs a little, and not to be lorded over their head, not like Elf on the Shelf way, not in a, because I think Elf on the Shelf is creepy. Not in that way, not in a way of counting up everything that you did that was naughty. I think that is not right, and I really don't like the idea of the naughty or nice list. I don't subscribe to that at all. That's kind of American Santa Claus situation. I don't subscribe to that. But I do subscribe to this idea that, as human beings, we sort of show up here and we try to strive to do nice things. And even our children are, children are all inherently good. So they're trying to strive to do nice things. But there's a little slip-ups that come in there. And so in our co-op, we actually are doing and this isn't my idea, this is the mom that's in charge of the festival this week. She asked for 3 good things and 1 snarky, naughty, or overly silly thing that kind of was disruptive. 1 disruptive kind of thing. And I had to tell you, we had to really think. about the disruptive thing for our children, because they, the two that are left that are still at home, there's not a whole lot of craziness that happens here. Yeah, there's some like snark every now and again, but there's definitely not a whole lot of craziness. Now, if you had asked me 10 years ago when I had everybody at home, my list probably could have been long, but it still would have been really easy to come up with those three positive qualities, and maybe a little bit harder to come up with a negative one. So I want to say I don't subscribe to the idea of the naughty and nice list. I don't like that, but I definitely think it's okay to discuss some things that we did as missteps. I think that in order to get out of the space of shame with regards to things that we have made mistakes on, we have to be in a space of, hey, that's a learning opportunity. And if we aren't in that space as adults, then our children aren't going to be able to be in that space. So I think it's okay. It's not as a rubbing your nose in it. It's not as a shameful thing. It's okay, though, to go, yeah, that was probably not my best decision. Because I've had plenty of those as an adult, and I think it's totally important for kids to be able to say, yeah, that probably wasn't my best decision, and be able to walk forward and learn from it. That's how we get out of the space of everything that we don't do as a failure, rather than things that didn't go so well. We learn from it, and that's a really healthier place to be. And if we don't ever talk about those things, then we can't sort of foster that. So that's my naughty or nice list conversation. And do with that what you will. In our home, and this is because for me, my entire life, we have never had Santa. It has always been St. Nicholas. So again, I'm saying if you're joining us late, headphones, please. And that a lot is largely due to the fact that we moved to Germany when I was 2, and we moved home from Germany when I was 6. And so we lived there. We lived there, and that was the tradition that was there. And my mom very much fell in love with those traditions and brought them home. So even though we only had that 4-year block of Sinterklaas or Saint Nicholas, even though I know that Sinterklaas is translated Santa Claus, but European Saint Nicholas is much different than German Santa Claus. So much different in the respect that historically, if you go back and look at the history of the two, one was definitely inspired by the other, but historically they're very different. If you look at especially American Santa Claus, his definitely has no bears very little resemblance to the Bishop of Myra in Europe. So very different, very different. So it was part of, for us, my family tradition, it was part of, I grew up Catholic, and so it was part of that, that tradition of bringing things toward Christmas, toward the Christ's birth. So Saint Nicholas was this man who was and there are very many different stories. The tradition that we have always had was he was a man from Myra. It was a bishop, and his biggest thing that always stuck in my mind as a child was that he was very giving, and he always took care of the children, And one of the stories is that he would find out about women or families in this area where they didn't have money for a dowry. The girls didn't have money for a dowry, and in those days you had to pay to get married. Goodness, that would change things if that were still the case today. But so you had to pay to get married, and so there would be these women that would want to marry, and they wouldn't have a dowry. And so the tradition is that he would give that money so that those families could then participate in that. So growing up as a child, St. Nicholas was always an incredibly giving entity in my life. And when I became a parent, that's what we started doing with our children. Now, I have to tell you, that did create some rifts with my ex-husband at first, until he was on board, or at least I thought he was on board. For 13 years he was on board, and then all of a sudden he wasn't on board. But we had this nice foundation of St. Nicholas. And I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't do both. honestly. We just never did. St. Nicholas brought the big gifts in our home, like the big stuff. And I will tell you the reason why I always loved that tradition was because it allowed things to be spread out. December seems like present orgy, and it doesn't matter even if you don't do a whole lot. If you've got family that gives, it just seems like it's just a lot of stuff. And so we try to always space it out. Did you have a question over there?
Oh, just a few comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Alicia, sorry, my voice is...
Eric is sick. Y'all pray for him.
Alicia Vincent says, I love the idea of St. Nick and we are celebrating this week, plus Christmas being about family gifts. Thank you. And Michelle Scott says, good morning. I love the book Santa's God that talks about the different Santas similar to the different religious beliefs.
I actually have never heard of that book. Please drop the author to that in the comments, and Eric will go hunting for it. Thank you for those comments. I think that, like I said, for us, it's always been sort of tied in with our spiritual tradition, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. One of the books that I really, really like is St. Nicholas by Jacob Strait. And I know, or at least the last I heard, that it was out of print, but I think there are still some places where you can find it. I would love it if the Waldorf Online Library would just make it available as an ebook, but it is a pretty popular book. I like it because it's several stories, and I don't have it here with me because I lent it to the person who's in charge of our festival. In charge of our festival, and so she's got that until tomorrow when I get it back. But it's got many little stories about Saint Nicholas and about his helper Pete. Now, there's a lot of controversy when you look at what happens in some European traditions. There's people that do blackface, which I think is bad, but Juju Magabo. Bad. And sort of dress up as Pete. I think that if you're going to dress up as St. Nick's helper, you should just be whatever ethnicity you actually are and not try to be somebody else. That's my personal opinion. But the book actually shows him as he was a beggar. And so the book, because the pictures are black and white, you can't tell what ethnicity he is. But that part doesn't matter. In my book, that part doesn't matter. The part that matters is that he helps Nicholas, and they are in this giving place together. So Nicholas loses his parents when he's very young, and he and Pete sort of take this wealth, because Nicholas's parents were extremely wealthy, and they take this wealth and they spread it all around. And that's what the Jacob Strait version focuses on, are those stories. They're very beautiful. They're perfect for the days before St. Nicholas. And so if it's something you don't have, grab it for next year, because I think that it's a perfect nights leading up to. And so when we get that book back tomorrow, we got 4 chapters to read so that we have we can get all the stories read before Wednesday. So the day of St. Nicholas his feast day is the 6th. And so you would leave your shoes out for him to fill on the night of the 5th. And that's also a great way, and again, please wear headphones if you're listening with children around. That is a great way to explain, and this is what we've always done for our kids, how that Santa energy or that person gets to all the children. Because not everybody celebrates at the same time. Some children celebrate that on December 25th, and some children celebrate that on December 6th. I know that there are some other European traditions that don't use the 6th, they use a different day, but it's all that giving energy right there. And so that's what I told my kids always from the beginning, was that that's how he gets to see everybody. He spreads himself around. It's not one grand day. And makes much more sense when children are starting to edge and teeter on that age of not believing space than it does to just say, oh, it's just magical. He just gets everybody. And of course, my children will be the first to point out, well, there are probably some faiths that wouldn't have St. Nicholas come. And there are, definitely probably some Jewish families that wouldn't have him come, likely some Muslim families that wouldn't have him come, and perhaps also some Hindu families that wouldn't have him come. not saying that he couldn't come to those families, just saying that that's probably outside of the religious tradition, and some families would allow that, would welcome that, and some of them wouldn't. And so, if you were to ask my children, they would explain to you this idea of how he gets to all of the people. So, with that, I say you keep this magic alive. You are the one who holds it. So my children, if they're writing St. Nicholas a letter, they write him a letter sometime in November, and which I know is very different because a lot of people don't start that whole like making your list for Santa thing until it's sometime in December. But my children write earlier, and I have to tell you a funny story. When Harry he wasn't a Boy Scout yet. He was still a Cub Scout, I think, wasn't he? He was a Cub still. He was not a Boy Scout yet, because the Boy Scouts would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about. So he had to have been 10 or 11. It was very on the very edge of not being a Cub Scout anymore. It was almost to the 12-year-old Boy Scout place. And he said to me, none of them believe, and they all think that I'm crazy. And I said, well, what would you like me to do? And he said, I think you should come and give them a lesson on St. Nicholas. And I was like, all right, I'll do that. Called the den leader and said, this is our tradition. I'd love to share it with the class and see what the boys think. And they were all over that. Of course, they were all over that. They're like, yes, a day we don't have to teach. Of course, come and tell us. And so I said, well, what we're going to do with that is we're going to have them all leave their shoes out and see if St. Nicholas will come and bring them some things while I'm doing the presentation. So they were all okay with that. So we had these boys in this room. There were probably maybe 8 or 10 of them. And I said to them all at the beginning, I said, okay, I need each of you to take your shoes off and let's leave them outside the door. And they were all thinking, because, they're at the age of not believing. So they're all like, she's crazy, but okay. I'm already the weird lady at church. So they leave their shoes out and they come back in and sit down. We shut the door. And meanwhile, we have a St. Nicholas person making sure that all of those shoes get filled with gold chocolate coins. That's what we did. Do you remember that day, Daddy?
I do.
Because you were helping St. Nicholas, it seems like.
Yep.
So I'm in the room and I'm talking to these children about the story and what we believe and where it came from. And I expected I was going to get a lot of hecklers, and I didn't. By the end, they were all like, how do we get him to come to our house on the 6th? How do we get him to come early? Like, how do you do that? How do you do that? What's the process? And I just told them all, well, you have to write your letter early and you have to let your parents know that you would like him to come early. And after we left there, I thought, oh man, I have just messed up Christmas for all of these kids. I had some parents that were like, oh, thanks. And some parents that were like, we can't do that. But it was an experience that Harry will never forget, because I went and I vindicated him with his friends. And so from there on in, he was like, you know what? I don't care what y'all think. This is what I know. And so I have this grand plan. And again, if you're my child and you're listening, swipe away, you can't hear this information. I have this grand plan that when they all have their first baby, each one of them, that I'm going to hand them each a set of fairy wings and say, it's your turn. It's your turn. Fairy wings and pixie dust. It's your turn. This is now, I'm handing this over to you. You get to create all the magic for your children. Because that's really what we create for them. We put them in a space of having that magical space and belief. And in our home, it has always been, if you don't believe, you don't receive, and not from a punitive place, but hey, if you don't participate in the magic, that's totally fine. Don't expect that the magic's going to give you a gift. And so they've always been very, like, all of them, all 5 of them have always been very much like, yes, ma'am. I'm here to help create magic, even as they've gotten older. And so, and keep in mind, I have one that's almost 22, one that's almost 20, one that's almost 18, and then Sam and Sarai are 12 and 7. So we have kept that magic space alive, and they all know that it's very important to me. And I can imagine when kids are gone, we're still going to be celebrating St. Nicholas because it's fun. It's fun. It's magical. The children always ask, "How come you and Dad don't get stuff on St. Nicholas?" And I always say, "Well, we end up being the helpers." And so we're always open about being helpers. We're always open about being helpers. We are always open about, like, we'll let him know what it is that you want. If you miss something on your list, so we'll let him know. I know his phone number. In fact, I can remember Terror and Harry when he was like 10 years old. He's like, "Don't mess with her. She knows his phone number." And so he was on the straight and narrow when it came to St. Nicholas. It was very, very important to him. But I have always been very open about, like, some years I will say, what you're asking from St. Nicholas is a tall order. And he let me know he's having a really hard time fulfilling that. So would you have an alternate? And often they'll be like, "Oh, yes." Or every now and again I thought he could do everything. And I go, "You know what? There are very few people in existence that can do everything. And he's one of them that cannot do everything. He can do a lot of things. But let's talk about what else you could put on your list instead." So we have absolutely done that. We have also done years where they got one big gift to share. I remember when my big boys were little, they were into Thomas the Tank Trains like crazy. And one year St. Nicholas brought a big train table and a whole bunch of Thomas trains for them to share. And they were all over it. They loved sharing gifts. One year, St. Nicholas brought a Wii and it only had cooperative games on it. And they were probably 12, 10, and 8, the big kids. And so that would have made Sam like 3, but and no Soraya yet. So it was always cooperative. It was always cooperative stuff when we would give a gift like that, or help St. Nicholas bring a gift like that. And it seems like that year that St. Nicholas brought a Wii, it was like a miracle because it was the year that they were all sold out. So St. Nicholas had to shop really early. I remember that year. Do you remember that year? I also remember that year really well because we all had the swine flu and we all thought we were dying. And I just remember Eric and I were like laying in bed and I could hear like Rock Band on the Wii. And that I was like, thank goodness for the Wii. Because we were so sick. But this is not about Waldorf and video games. This just is my sharing what sorts of things St. Nicholas has brought. St. Nicholas always brings chocolate coins and always brings some sort of chocolate. My children have expectation. Maybe expectation isn't the right word. We have tradition, and that tradition usually starts at World Market, Cost Plus, because they have all of the candy that I had as a child when I lived in Germany. Or at least a lot of it. When I was a child, St. Nicholas used to bring Kinder Egg, and we don't have the real ones here in the United States, and the ones that I found in Mexico are kind of yucky. I'm not sure what's going on with the chocolate that they have there. I'm not sure if the European ones are better. But so St. Nicholas will probably bring some Kinder Joy eggs, which is a little bit different. St. Nicholas also brings traditionally a piece of fruit, even though Soraya will act like it is poison. I will have to tell her he's not trying to poison her, that she's welcome to share her orange with somebody else. So sometimes St. Nicholas brings nuts as well. Often St. Nicholas wraps their gift in a silk and leaves it on the table next to their shoes. So they'll generally leave their shoes outside, and St. Nicholas brings those shoes inside and puts them on the table. There's a special table space where we do that, and often St. Nicholas will wrap up their gift and then spread a lot of chocolate coins out everywhere. So that's a little bit fun, something that they all look forward to. The comment over here, kids are up, gotta go before I leave. We just read about the St. Nicholas December 5th holiday in our Christmas Around the World study in Germany. And my kids really want to leave their shoes up. I would. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. In fact, I asked Harry, my oldest, who lives downtown here in San Diego near us, I said, so you live behind a gate. I'm not sure St. Nicholas can manage that. And he was like, huh? I said, would you like him to leave your gift at our house? And you could just come after work and see what he brought you? Or would you like him to try to mail it? And he goes, oh, yes, you're right. I live behind a gate. I think I would like him to bring it to your house. I was like, oh, thank goodness. I will let him know. So we have that all covered for our adult children. Jacob will be here next week. And so St. Nicholas will leave his gift here as well. So, and I have asked him, would you like St. Nicholas to send it to your house? And he has said, no, I want it at your house. And so there is something magical about them all being together, or being with family when they experience that. So it's something that they're excited about, even when they're grown-ups. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out if I've missed anything. Any comments over there that I need to attend to? Okay. Yeah, I can't think of anything. If you're listening and you've got questions that I've missed, please, I guess, wait, let's talk about this. There have been questions about, like, how do we transition from one to the other? And I have to tell you, it's not as hard as you think. I would just be honest with your kids and say, there's this great tradition. Let's celebrate it this year. And I would, so like, if you've done only Santa up until now, this year I would try to do both. And just say, I understand that St. Nicholas, he's kind of like the head Santa. This would be my story. It's like the head dude. And so he likes to bring the gifts, the big gifts, on December 6th. What do y'all think about that? So I would ask them. Now, granted, today is the 3rd, so you would not have a whole lot of time to sort of figure that out. But put that in your hat for next year if you want it to be bigger next year. Or have something small this year, and next year, and then talk about it afterwards, then just say, I understand that for some children, he brings everything early in the year. Now, people will say, well, so what do you open on Christmas? Everything else. So St. Nicholas sort of helps spread out the wealth of stuff. So we have, did you get lost over there? Oh, thank you, Facebook, for kicking us off. But thankfully, we're still over here on Instagram. And thankfully, it's recorded. So one of the things that I always appreciated was that because it's spread out, when we still had paycheck to paycheck situation, and we were trying to spread out all of the gift buying, it was super helpful to have some of the things that had to come at the beginning of the month and then some other things that came at the end of the month. That was from a practical standpoint. And so that was super helpful. The other thing is we do the St. Nicholas stuff on the 6th, and then we have, as Christians, we have time to really focus on the Savior and special giving that comes at Christmas time, and have it not be about Santa Claus. That was really, for a lot of years, was what was the most important to me. And it still is fairly important to me that we can pull those two apart and celebrate them differently. We also celebrate the solstice here. So December is a pretty heavy festival month for us. So we'll have St. Nicholas on the 6th. We'll have St. Lucy on the 13th. And with that, we try to do some sort of service project. I'm super excited. Our co-op is going to go to an organization called PATH next week, and we will be feeding the homeless and putting together hygiene kits. So I'm super excited for us to have that opportunity. Eric and I have done it before, and our kids, and it was great. So I'm excited to do it again. So we do some sort of service for St. Lucy's Day. excuse me, we have the winter solstice where we celebrate the, here comes the sun. And from our perspective, it's also SON, not just SUN. So you can look at that both ways. And then we celebrate Christmas, which is traditionally when everybody gets together. And so when I was a single mom and we had to do this like back and forth custody thing, it was not a big deal to me because we always sort of did our thing on the solstice. And so that was super helpful to just not have that animosity over that day and over, because it just feels yucky when you have to do the custody thing. It feels yucky to have to be fighting about who gets who on Christmas. So I always, from an early point with my big kids, we always did a lot of things on the winter solstice, and that or the eve of the winter solstice. And so that kind of gave us that Christmas vibe and Christmas feeling. And then on Christmas Day, we've got family things, there's plenty of things. So it was nice to always sort of spread out the gift giving, because it allowed for there to not be that letdown that happens often after Christmas. And often we build it up and build it up and build it up, adults and children. And then there's this letdown. This way you get to keep the whole month as a month of giving and receiving and loving each other and gift giving, whether it be you getting them or you giving them. And I found that it really helps the gimmies not be part of this month. So because especially they get a lot of that out of the way at St. Nicholas, and then back in.
Jenna asked she asked about tips for keeping gifts meaningful and not overdoing gifts with doing St. Nicholas and Santa.
Oh, absolutely. So I would have, if you're doing both of them, I would not overdo St. Nicholas. If you're doing both of them, I would have St. Nicholas bring small things. Like by that, I would say like stocking stuffer kind of things. I would say not big things. I would also say if you are a religious family, then I would say you could, in your doing both, I would say you could definitely keep the St. Nicholas gifts more on a spiritual level. And then you can have your Santa thing that happens on Christmas Day. I know that it is a big change for a lot of Americans, that they are like, I don't think I can do that. That is okay. You should do what feels comfortable for you. I am definitely just sharing what's comfortable for us. It was not a problem when Eric and I got married. I remember having this conversation and I was like, Christmas is important to me. He's like, I hate Christmas. I remember that was our first fight before we got married. And I seriously thought, I do not know if I can marry this man because he doesn't like Christmas. But then we had this deeper conversation. But, it was a deeper conversation about, okay, this is why it's important to me. And I could bring to him our love and belief of St. Nicholas. And he was like, oh, now I get it. Yes, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So it has always been St. Nicholas. And I think you probably like those traditions better anyway, don't you? Yeah. There's like, he used to talk about this letdown that happens after Christmas. And this way there is no letdown, because there's this excitement that sort of goes the whole month. And then we end up like really celebrating the end of the year together and that and getting excited about next year. So it helps there not be that letdown by being very purposeful about it. So that's what I would say. If you're trying to do both, if you have a partner who's like, no, we have to do Santa, then I would say definitely do both. I would also really examine I think Americans especially have so much poop about Christmas. And I can remember, because remember I said that my ex-husband supported St. Nicholas until we got divorced. And then it was all about, he would do the Santa thing at his house, even though my big kids were like, I don't even understand. But I can remember one of the last times that Ellie went, she had come home afterwards and she had gotten in trouble, and which was odd because he was very permissive. So it was really odd that she got in trouble. The reason why she got in trouble is because she told her grandmother, my ex-mother-in-law, that, what was it that she said? That this was not the reason for the season.
It was something.
and that Christmas is not about the presents. We did our presents for St. Nicholas. Christmas should not be all about the presents. And I just remember my ex-husband was so mad. But it was because it was like it was overstimulating. And in her little, she was probably almost 8 at the time. She was 7. She's probably Soraya's age. She was really like frustrated and confused because it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. And it just came out as verbal diarrhea. And I just remember when she told me that she said that, I was really at first kind of shocked. And then I thought, I can totally see how overwhelming December can be for children. And how you can have such a different feeling about it when it's not about this ramp up to this giant day, this day of stuff. I'm not saying that has to be that way. You can absolutely have magical time, do the Santa Claus thing, for sure you can. As long as you're really deliberate about it, though, it helps children to not be in that stressed out place. It helps them to not be freaked out about what's coming, and it helps the tantruming. When people talk to me about how much tantruming is going on, I go, what's going on in your house right now that is making the tantruming act like that? Now, I will say, Soraya has definitely been in a much higher space, like as far as her energy goes, because she's 7.5. She's very much into like list making. She's got some OCD going, and that's legit. And she's sensory seeking, so she will be looking for things to be excited about. And so we have to continually work to sort of keep that in a level that feels appropriate and a level that doesn't stress her out, because it is stressful for children to go to that place. Super stressful. So you're going to want to be on so much more this month. But really and truly, if you're looking for, and again, if you're joining us late, please put on headphones, not children friendly. If you're looking for a way to spread that out, consider St. Nicholas. Consider St. Nicholas so it doesn't feel like this giant present orgy day and it feels overwhelming to them. It can be incredibly stressful. So I think that's all. Do you have anything else over there? All right, you guys, if I have missed something, please let me know. I'm happy to discuss it and cover it. If you're catching me on Instagram, feel free to DM me. Catching us on Facebook, feel free to send us a message. Catching us on YouTube, drop us a message in the comments, and I'm happy to discuss those. Okay, next week we are talking about, I don't remember. Oh, next week we're talking about rhythm at home during the holidays when Dad's home more generally, and having more, more people there, and how do you keep that rhythm, and how do you sort of go about that? So that's next Monday. The week after that, we're going to talk about the New Year planning, and I'm not talking about necessarily about school planning. I'm talking about planners, like mom planners. And for that one, I am hoping that there will be some people that want to share what planners they use, because I thought we would make it an open conversation. So it will be definitely more Facebook centered, because I don't know how to do it on Instagram, but I'll figure it out between now and then, where you can all talk. And then the last Monday, we will do the story that I wrote called The Yuletide Fairies. So, yeah.
Jenna says, St. Nicholas feels even more magical than Santa as we have begun that tradition. And Michelle Scott says, thank you for doing this. It helps me so much as I love and wanted to do both. It's super helpful.
Great. I'm glad. Yes, it is super magical. And it's one of the reasons why I think I've been able to keep it alive so long with my children, even my adult children, is because he was a real dude. He was a real dude. So it's so much easier to just say he was a real guy, and his spirit lives on. Because as they get older, they start to deconstruct stuff. My children, on the other hand, are like, I want to find more stories about St. Nicholas. I want to know more. And like I said, I really love the little Jacob Strait book. That's a good one. And Jenna has it. Jenna has it. It's all good. She has it because tomorrow we're going to do something magical and fun for our co-op. But I like that book. There's a book that I have called Sinterklaas that has no words in it at all. That's beautiful, but it's out of print. I will just look for some fun ways to sort of bring that magic in, and I'll read a bunch of traditions about it. There are some traditions that are fun and amazing, and you don't have to do Krampus. Although I have to say that since we started talking about Krampus, it's kind of funny. Although I don't ever say he's going to take you away in a bag. Never, 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 never. I might say you probably better be careful in case he's out there, but not in a really super creepy way. Things are very playful at my house. Anyway, I think that's all. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and happy December. See you later. Bye.